Before there were cities, before writing, there was awe. The first humans looked at the sky, the seasons, the cycle of life and death, and sensed something beyond themselves. The earliest evidence of religious behavior dates back over 100,000 years. Neanderthals in Europe and Homo sapiens in Africa both buried their dead with care, sometimes with flowers or tools. These burials suggest a belief in something after death, a spirit that continues. It is the first trace of animism, the idea that natural objects, animals, and even places have a spiritual essence. Animism was not a single religion but a worldview. As human societies grew more complex, so did their spiritual ideas. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 3000 BCE, the first cities emerged, and with them organized religion. The Sumerians built massive temples called ziggurats, believing that gods lived at the top. Each city had its own patron deity, and priests acted as intermediaries between the people and the gods. Myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh explored themes of mortality and the search for immortality. Religion became a way to explain natural forces like floods and droughts, and to justify the power of kings. The gods were human-like, with emotions and flaws. Around 500 BCE, a profound shift occurred in multiple regions simultaneously. In India, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, taught that desire causes suffering and that enlightenment could be achieved through ethical living and meditation. In China, Confucius emphasized social harmony, filial piety, and moral virtue. In Greece, philosophers like Socrates questioned traditional myths and sought rational explanations for existence. These developments marked the rise of what historians call the Axial Age, a period when religions and philosophies began to focus on individual ethics, inner spirituality, and universal truths, rather than just tribal rituals. The Axial Age laid the groundwork for the world's major religious traditions. Buddhism spread across Asia, evolving into different schools. Confucianism became the bedrock of Chinese society. In Greece, philosophy paved the way for later Christian theology. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, a new monotheistic faith emerged, Islam, in the 7th century CE. It emphasized submission to one God, Allah, and saw itself as the final revelation in a line that included Judaism and Christianity. These religions, born from earlier spiritual seeds, continue to shape billions of lives today, each offering a different answer to the same ancient questions about existence. The first temples appeared. At Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, built around 9500 BCE, hunter-gatherers erected massive stone pillars carved with animals. It was a gathering place for ritual, not for living. Göbekli Tepe challenges the idea that religion came after civilization. Here, the temple may have come first, and the city grew around it. By 7000 BCE, at Çatalhöyük in Anatolia, houses were built closely together with no streets. People entered through the roof. Inside, walls were painted with scenes of hunting and ritual. The dead were buried beneath the floors, keeping ancestors close. The first cities of Mesopotamia, Uruk, Babylon, were built around temples. The city belonged to its patron god, and the temple was the god's house on earth. In Sumer, the first civilization with writing, religion was a complex pantheon. Each city had its own patron deity. Enlil of Nippur, Inanna of Uruk, Enki of Erid. The gods were not distant. They lived in the temple, ate from offerings, and decided the fate of the city. Priests managed the temple economy, collecting grain and distributing rations. Religion was woven into every aspect of life. Kings claimed divine right, laws were given by gods, and the calendar was filled with festivals. To question the gods was to question the order of the world. The Sumerians believed the gods controlled every aspect of life. To ensure good harvests and protection, priests performed daily rituals of food, drink, and prayer. Temples were economic centers. They owned land, employed workers, and stored grain. The high priest was often the city's ruler, combining religious and political. The Epic of Gilgamesh from around 2100 BCE reveals Sumerian views on mortality and the gods. Gilgamesh, part god, seeks immortality but learns that only the gods live forever. The flood story from the Epic of Gilgamesh parallels the biblical account. Utnapishtim, warned by a god, builds a boat and survives a great flood sent to destroy humanity. The flood story in Gilgamesh parallels the biblical Noah. A god warns a man to build a boat, saving life from a great deluge. This story would echo across cultures. By 1800 BCE, Babylon rose under King Hammurabi. The city's god Marduk became the head of the pantheon. The Enuma Elish, a creation epic, tells how Marduk defeated the chaos monster Tiamat and created the world from her body. The Enuma Elish was recited during the New Year festival. It reaffirmed Marduk's supremacy and the king's divine right to rule. Religion and politics were inseparable. Mesopotamian religion was not just about gods. It included demons, omens, and magic. People. The afterlife was grim. The underworld, Ker, was a dusty, dark place where the dead ate dust. Only by proper burial and offerings could the dead find some peace. Despite its gloom, Mesopotamian religion was rich and sophisticated. It gave the world the first epics, the first law codes tied to divine will, and the first systematic theology. But while Mesopotamia built its pantheon, another civilization along the Nile was developing a very different kind of religion, one obsessed with order, death, and resurrection. Ancient Egyptian religion was deeply optimistic. The Nile's annual flood brought life, and the sun rose each day without fail. This predictability shaped a belief in cosmic order called Ma'at. Ma'at represented truth, balance, and justice. The pharaoh's duty was to maintain Ma'at on earth. If he failed, chaos, Isfit. Egypt had hundreds of gods, often depicted as animals or animal-headed humans. Ra, the sun god; Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification; Horus, the falcon-headed sky god. Unlike Mesopotamia, Egyptian gods were mostly benevolent. The afterlife was a continuation of life, not a dreary existence. But to reach it, one had to pass judgment. The Book of the Dead provided spells and instructions for the journey. It was placed in the tomb to guide the deceased. The heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was lighter, the soul could enter the afterlife. If heavier, it was devoured by Ammit, the devourer. The most important spell in the Book of the Dead ensured the heart did not betray the soul during the final judgment. The heart, considered the seat of intelligence and emotion, was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and order. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul could enter the afterlife. If heavier, it was devoured by the monster Ammit. Mummification was a religious act. By preserving the body, the soul could reunite with it in the afterlife. The process took 70 days and involved removing organs, drying the body with natron salt, and wrapping it in linen. The brain was extracted through the nose, and the internal organs were stored in canopic jars. Tombs were filled with everything the dead might need: food, furniture, weapons, and even servants in the form of Shabti figurines. These small statues were believed to come to life and perform manual labor for the deceased in the afterlife. The wealthy built pyramids or rock-cut tombs, while commoners were buried in simple desert graves. The pharaoh was considered a living god, the son of Ra. His authority was absolute, and his death was a transition to join the gods. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu, stands as a testament to this belief. It required thousands of workers and millions of stone blocks, each weighing. Egyptian religion was not static. In the 14th century BCE, Pharaoh Akhenaten attempted a radical shift. He promoted the worship of Aten, the sun disk, as the soul. Akhenaten's monotheism was short-lived. After his death, the old gods were restored, and his name was erased from monuments. But his experiment showed that the idea of one god was already emerging. Egyptian religion influenced later cultures. The Greeks identified their gods with Egyptian ones: Zeus with Amun, Hermes with Thoth. The mystery cults of Isis spread across the Roman Empire. Empires, a small people in Canaan, were developing a radically different idea: a single, invisible, all-powerful God who demanded ethical behavior. The ancient Israelites emerged in the Levant around 1200 BCE. Their religion early on was henotheistic. They worshipped one God, Yahweh, but acknowledged the existence of other gods. The Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, records the evolution of this belief. The covenant with Abraham, the exodus from Egypt under Moses, and the giving of the law at Sinai established a unique relationship. Yahweh was not a nature god tied to a place. He was the creator of the universe, transcendent and invisible. This was revolutionary. The prophets of Israel, like Isaiah and Jeremiah, emphasized ethics over ritual. They taught that God desired justice, mercy, and humility, not just sacrifices. This ethical monotheism would become the foundation of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The idea of a single moral God who judges human actions changed the world. Meanwhile, in Greece, a different kind of religious imagination was flourishing. The Greeks did not have a single sacred text or a priestly class. Their religion was woven into every aspect of life. The Greek gods lived on Mount Olympus. They were immortal, but they had human flaws: jealousy, anger, love. The idea of a single moral God who judges human actions changed the world. Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo each had their own domain and personality. Greek religion was not about belief in a doctrine. It was about practice, sacrifice, festival, and myth. The gods were honored with temples, statues, and athletic games like oracles, especially the Oracle of Delphi, were consulted for guidance. The god Apollo spoke through a priestess in a trance. Her words, often cryptic, shaped decisions of war and peace. Greek mythology explained the world. Why seasons change, why there is evil, why humans suffer. The stories of Prometheus, Pandora, and Persephone were not just tales. They were truths about the human. Philosophy began to question the myths. Thinkers like Thales, Anaximander, and Heraclitus sought natural explanations for the cosmos. They asked, what is the world made of? What is the first principle? This shift from myth to reason laid the foundation for Western thought. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle sought rational explanations. But they did not reject the gods entirely. They reinterpreted them. The mystery cults, like the Eleusinian mysteries, offered personal salvation and a better afterlife. Initiation involved secret rituals that promised blessings in the next world. When Alexander the Great conquered the Near East, Greek culture mixed with local religions. This Hellenistic period saw the rise of syncretic gods like Serapis, combining Greek and Egyptian elements. Rome, in turn, absorbed Greek religion almost entirely. The Roman gods were renamed versions of Greek ones: Jupiter for Zeus, Juno for Hera, Mars for Ares. Roman religion was practical. The principle of do ut des, I give so that you may give, governed relations with the gods. Ritual correctness mattered more than faith. The Romans were tolerant of other religions, as long as they did not threaten public order. They often incorporated foreign gods into their pantheon, a process called interpretatio Romana. One exception was the Jewish and later Christian refusal to worship Roman gods. This led to conflicts, but also to the spread of Christianity, which would eventually become the state religion. By the 4th century CE, Christianity had transformed the Roman Empire. The old gods were not overthrown overnight. They faded, were reinterpreted. The Renaissance revived them. The Enlightenment critiqued them. Today, we still live with the legacy of these ancient beliefs. The idea of a cosmic order, the moral law, the soul's journey, these are gifts from the past. From the first burials to the great temples, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the teachings of the prophets, ancient religion was humanity's first attempt to understand the universe and our place in it. And that quest, that sense of something beyond, it continues.